Good afternoon, everyone. This is Griffin here with Motility's Professional Services Department. For those of you returning from earlier today, welcome. Newcomers, welcome as well. Today's afternoon session here will start in just a few minutes. Like I always do, I try to leave a few minutes for anyone joining last minute. It'll give me a chance to top off my end of day coffee, which I know I shouldn't be drinking, but here we are. And I think today we're going to be covering the mobile technician's ability to utilize this system. Much easier for them to worry about a mobile application that they can use from their phone, tablet, you name it, as opposed to logging into a desktop terminal in the past. So like I mentioned, let's give about 2 or 3 more minutes for everyone to get settled in, and we'll get started with tech training. All right, everybody. Thank you for being patient and holding for a few minutes here. Let's go ahead and get started into tech training. This training session is going to be a little different than the previous sessions, as we will be using our Infinity mobile app. Now, I say mobile app, I really should be saying web app, because what this actually is a web address. I'm going to go ahead and open it up here. And as you've noticed, this is our Google Chrome browser. So for those of you on Android phones or non-iOS devices, Chrome will work just fine for this. And that can be any device, whether it's an Android tablet. I've even seen Amazon Fire tablets can work now that they can access Chrome. So there's a number of ways you could get to this. And as you can see, I'm doing it directly from a desktop. So you could even log in on a home computer to this app if you chose to do so instead of the desktop. It definitely isn't intended to replace service writing. However, there are some functionalities in here that you might find useful from a service writer's point of view. For example, you could check in a new unit or a customer's unit, take photos, do a multi-point inspection, get them to electronically sign or digitally sign on an estimate for approval. So a lot of functionality here, but today we're going to focus on the tech side of it. All right, so I'm going to switch the login here from Tim to myself. And we'll go ahead and log right in. So again, phone, tablet, desktop, this will work on any of those devices. As you can see, it is formatted pretty well for a phone, right? It's supposed to be a minimized view. You can always maximize it here and get our full screen real estate, so it makes a bit more sense. And this is the Motility web app. So in this top section here, you've got sales, right? So on Monday's session this week on our webinar, we discussed the CRM on the desktop. Well, probably in next week's session, I will try to bring this side of it in as well. But anything you learned on the desktop version of the software is going to follow suit here. So for example, we talked about following up with your new contacts first, need to contacts, etc. This is all the same information, just viewed a little differently. Okay, so whatever you've learned on the desktop versions, both in parts, service, and sales, that will, that information will be repeated here. So you'll start to see some familiarities between the two. So now let's focus on what we're training on today, and that is the technician time clock. So you can see there's a bunch of different buttons in here, but technicians just worry about a singular one. It's called the mechanic clock. Now, when they log in for the day, they can click these little bars up here at the top or click the time clock here. Both of these are general time clocks, the one up here in the top left and the one right here. So if I click on that, the system's going to ask for me to clock in for the day. So let's pretend I'm not going to be on my do not disturb. I'm going to clock in. Let's pretend I did this at 9 a.m. this morning, or 8, as I really should be. So now I'm punched in. That time is not associated with any work order. This is just my 9 to 5 or 8 to 5, 9 to 6 time frame, whatever the case may be. This is your time clock for your general time clock. But we also have a technician time clock specific to the work orders. So now when I click on mechanic clock, let's see what this screen looks like. When you're a mechanic and you're logged, or a technician or a porter or anything in between, when you log into this mobile web app, you're going to see invoices that you've been assigned, and that's it. So for example, Denny's asking a great question right off the bat. He's asking for geolocation. That is correct. So what Denny is asking there is, can we restrict the technicians or any of our mobile users from clocking in when they're 15 minutes down the road, 20 minutes down the road? You are correct, sir. You can IP restrict users from clocking in so that they may not punch in unless they are on company Wi-Fi or from an IP address that is approved to allow them to punch in at. So hopefully that answers your question, Danny. But yes, we can restrict that access so you don't get guys grabbing an extra 10, 15 minutes on their drive in to the shop. From here, now what I was mentioning on the technician side is they only see work orders they're assigned. So you're welcome, sir. So when we're looking at this list, if you recall on our service listing, there's more than 3 invoices, right? I've got quite a few here. However, as we start filtering down and looking at it in reality, and I say, okay, show me all my work orders, assigned to a singular mechanic, there's much less. And if you notice, all of these job lines on these are complete. So for mechanic Griff, or whatever this mechanic's name is, I think it's admin actually, I can see what he's working on. And from this main list view, I can see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the invoices that he was working on, all of the job lines are complete. That's what that complete or COMP column is stating. It's saying there was 1 job line on this ticket, it's complete. There were 3 job lines on this ticket, etc. So what does that leave me? Well, if I look at what's not complete, there are 3 outstanding invoices. Now, 1 is almost complete, 3 of 4, but until the entire ticket is closed or on the technician side, it's still going to show in their list view. So now when I go back here, it makes sense to see there are still 3 remaining ticket items left to clock into or to punch into. Okay, so your first question before we proceed on the technician side is, well, how do we get that a technician assigned? There's a number of ways of doing it. I'll try not to spend too much time here. We do have a full dispatching calendar, which if you recall in our scheduling session earlier today, we discussed putting the RO on a calendar. Now this dispatching section is actually a way for you to put individual job lines onto a calendar as well. So same process, I have 3 technicians on my team, right? If their names don't show up in here, they're either not on your team or not listed as a mechanic. And of these 3, I could see every unassigned job line in this need to schedule list. Now this is a demo environment, so it looks kind of wonky, but these are all the work orders that have line items that haven't been assigned. And you're seeing the same invoice multiple times here. So if I type in invoice number 124553, there are 3 lines. Parts are in stock, repair line 1, 2, and 3. 2 are warranty lines, 2 are 1's retail. There's a complaint section so we can see what's available. If I'm ready to dispatch these lines, you could start hitting dispatch and picking the next available mechanic based on who's clocked in or who doesn't have something already on the calendar. We're going to dive more into this dispatching in our next service scheduling session. But for those of you, wanting a quicker way to assign a technician and you don't want to have to use the calendar, you can do that too. You have a number of ways of assigning a mechanic. For example, if you right-click on an invoice, you can click Invoice Options and hit Apply Mechanic to All Jobs, choose the technician you want to assign, pick the job lines you'd like to assign him to, hit Save, and now you're done. So now Mr. Bob Owens here will also have a work order pop up in his need to do list, and that's going to be this job line, this screen door upgrade. So you've got flexibility here if you want to do it from outside the invoice. Well, what if I don't want to do it from outside of the invoice? What if I have my ticket open? Well, here's the other way you can do it. In this section here, there's a mechanic number. When you place something onto the dispatch calendar or you right-click on an invoice and apply a mechanic, you're going to do exactly what this has done. It's just going to stamp that number in there. I can do this manually by adding a line here called winterization. I should probably use a repair code, but for the sake of our demo, I'm just going to skip through that. And I can assign that mechanic to that winterization job by picking his name or mechanic number from the list. That's it. Now, this invoice was already in my technician's queue, but he will see an additional job line pop up to clock into once he goes into that ticket. So whether you're putting the information in here, you're actually scheduling the job lines onto the calendar using the Schedule tab, or you're right-clicking on an invoice and applying it from outside of the ticket, all of those functions do one thing. It gets that invoice onto that technician's queue to begin working. Now, you may ask, what order will it sort it in? Usually it's by the oldest invoice first, but if you would prefer it to follow what the calendar is showing, you can show dispatching calendar, dispatching ascending, by the promise date. There's a number of filtering options that you would like your technician to queue by. But usually date created is a good because it's a good indicator because it's going to put the oldest invoice in there first. So if this is here from February, probably want to get that done. So what does the technician's screen actually look like once we're in a ticket? Before we go in, you do have basic information regarding the service invoice. You also have what type of repair lines are on it. C for customer pay, I for internal work, and W for warranty. You can have a ticket with all 3 item types. The system is designed so that you can cash out a ticket with multiple payment types. There's no need to split warranty work off in the case of waiting for warranty approval or for our warranty admin to submit. The main reason you would probably split lines away is so that you can take the customer's payment and cash their side out and leave the other items alone, because you want to make sure that ticket captured the customer's retail. But going into a ticket, let's pick this first one here, customer Amir Mercedes. There's 0 of 1 job lines completed. So what do we have in here? So here's my job line. If there's any detail on manufacturer or extended warranty, I can show that here. But we'll go ahead and click on that repair line. And unfortunately, my service writing team hasn't done a very good job of filling out my complaint cause and correction. I have nothing to go off of here. So let's just, if your technicians are able to do that and they know what the issue is, by all means, they can populate these items. And forgive my using a winterization for everything. Unfortunately, my repair knowledge is fairly limited. But with that information in there, now they know what they're working on. They can go ahead and punch in. Now, keep in mind, all 3 of these fields here, complaint, cause, and correction, are all speech to text capable. So if your technicians are using, an iPhone or an Android phone, within the last couple of years, all of those pieces of technology contain a speech to text, icon when they're doing their texting, or in this case, when they're filling out the fields. So they can use that speech to text to populate this, so they're not using the keyboard if they don't want to. But first thing I want to do is I need to clock into this winterization job and get it started. So I'm going to hit the clock in button, change my repair status. It was most likely in a not started status by default. Of course, I'm using a demo here, so someone had this in on hold, but it would have gone from not started, and I'm going to mark it as in process. Save my changes, continue. I could close out of this mobile application right now. Just close out of it, right? I'm back on my main page. Well, my time is still running. Your technicians do not need to leave the mobile application up. It will still continue to accrue time. The only time it will stop doing so is if they manually clock out or they attempt to punch in on a second job, in which case the system will clock them out of the first job, clock them into the new job they're punching into. So a few minutes have gone by. Let's say my technician's ready to jump back into the work order and complete the work that they've done. So I'm going to go back to my web link. Usually you're going to have a shortcut icon, so that they can jump right to it on their, whether it's on their phone desktop or they've got it hyperlinked in their device, they usually will just get right back to it. And then when I go back into the mechanic clock section, they'll just go right back in. Now, one thing noting here is that we do have settings that, if your technician closes out of the app and goes back in, it can put them back exactly where they were. Usually that's on like a 15 or 20 minute timer or so. So sometimes if they spend a long time on, an hour on a job and come back, they may have to navigate back to the invoice. But if it's a quick, 20, 30 minute job, I think we may be able to extend time there in terms of where it brings them right back in. But either way, as you can see, it's fairly simple to get back to where we were. Clock out of my ticket. I'm going to mark my repair status as tech done, which does not complete the line item, but now it allows my service writer to QC this work based on what was added. So let's talk about what else technicians can do from within this ticket. They can check clock totals by hitting save, clicking on clock totals, and this will show them all of the time that this job line is paying, what they've actually flagged onto it, and if the technician needs to make an adjustment because they over-flagged or under-flagged. So here, I actually flagged 0.02 of an hour, which sounds about right. We didn't spend too much time in there. And, any additional information, like if it was a flat rate repair code, it would show me how long it should have taken and how much my actual time has either gone up or under the time allotted. They also have the ability to change lot location. So if you have a technician who moves units from space to space or zone to zone on your lot, they can trigger a porter move. Now, we can't do so without a service tag, and it looks like my current permissions disallow my mechanic from adding a service tag. So to finalize this, we would need to get our service writer to correctly key in the service tag of that unit. Then I will be able to porter it from its current location into a new one. So always make sure the system's always making sure that the, service tag and what needs to be assigned to this ahead of time are done before letting folks do a porter move. From here, we can also do a parts request. So the intention of this application or the web app is so that a tech can punch his time, make parts requests, take photos of the unit, doing this all from within the camper. As long as the Wi-Fi strength is strong enough, they can work from anywhere in the shop and complete these items. So for example, here's an old fulfilled parts request. We always keep that old data here, but I can hit new parts request, request something from our battery shop. Please see photo number 1, new battery needed, and I don't know the part number. If they know the part number, excellent. Key it in here. That'll be additional information for the parts team to use. Otherwise, many times they'll be taking photos of this information, and we can see that within the invoice. So we're going to go ahead and leave that unfulfilled parts request or not fulfilled parts request for just a moment. So maybe I can't continue with my work. That's fine. We'll back out of this invoice, continue with the others. And then hopefully when my parts team runs that battery out, I know that I can continue back on that previous repair job and move forward. Okay. Now I already marked my job as tech done, which as you can see has removed my job from the criteria, which is problematic, right? I can no longer adjust, or I can't even see my parts request. So what I'm trying to show here is it's important that the steps are ordered in the appropriate way. Now I can still take photos, change the lot location, but I can't clock back in because I marked it as done. Technicians should only be doing so when they're ready for the rest of the service advisors or manager to see their work and finalize the ticket. Because I've done so preemptively, I would have to request that my service team come back into the ticket, pull that invoice up, and see it doesn't need to be marked tech done. It needs to be back on hold because I could not complete it with my parts request. So there is an order of how things should go here. Techs shouldn't just complete jobs as they go because they're going to lose functionality they may need. And very quickly, technicians will learn that don't preemptively close things until all parts are here, all the notes are in, which is a good thing. Sometimes we want to slow down that portion of the process so they're not moving too quickly. So my service writer has reopened that line back for us. So now going back into my application, I should be able to return back to it by refreshing the screen. And here's my winterization job. So there is some interaction if the service team or the technicians move too far, too quickly, and they do need assistance, they would have to reach out for a service advisor to reopen that job for them. So it keeps them a little more, okay, am I done with everything here before wasting anybody's time to go QC that and realize, oh, we never even added the part to the ticket. So I'm going to mark this back as in process and clock my time back in because I'm still working on this. Let's talk about the photos. So we have invoice pictures. So I can add pictures from my photo library if I've taken them already, or I can just take photos live here, and this could be relevant to the damages of the vehicle for warranty purposes. It could be for the parts request that we just mentioned, or even just for personal protection of the dealership to make sure that all photos were logged when the vehicle was dropped off, so the customer can't state that there was any liability damage caused by the dealership. So however these photos are being added or for what purpose, that is done so through this web app. And all of those photos can be recalled by simply opening up an invoice and hitting view images, and they will all show right here. Or every technician can get to it from the web app just by going to this invoice picture screen. Okay, pretty straightforward. Let's go back a second and let's return to our parts request functionality. So it's been a little bit of time. Hopefully my parts team has seen that request. Let's go look at the desktop version of the software to see what that looks like. So there is a dedicated portion of the software called parts requests. And this is going to be, and it's got a number next to it. That's the number of parts requests. It's also showing in red because there is new information here that I have not attended to since my last clicking on it. And as you can see, this is every parts request as it comes in. And right there at the very top, we've got a Mirror Mercedes from the batteries department Please see photo 1, need new battery, and I don't know what the part number is. Great. We can hit open here. The parts employee could pull up this exact ticket to view images to find the pictures. They could go to repair info, vehicle info. Well, unfortunately, my service writer didn't put the vehicle information on here, so that's not helping me. But again, there's multiple places where that parts employee could validate what was here, add that part to the parts section. So maybe the tech doesn't know what the part number is. Well, they can go to the description field here and type in battery, and the system will do a search on all batteries. Now, will they grab the right one or not is a big question. But, usually the reason they're in the parts department is they're familiar with these types of items. So I've added my part. I will relieve it once I've given it to my tech, but I'm going to go ahead and mark the parts request as fulfilled. Now, you can mark it as on order or received if it was, ordered and received but hasn't yet been brought to the tech. But really, this fulfilling of a parts request should only happen once that part is in the tech's hands. Then the parts runner comes back and marks it fulfilled. They go ahead and relieve the battery because the technician is installing it into the vehicle. Perhaps they also ran out this super hitch that was needed. And now my technician can continue. So we'll refresh the page on the technician side. They have parts in hand. The parts request is completed. They'll go ahead and mark the job back as in process, continue their work until they're done. When they are finished, they will click clock out. The last functionality that you'll find here for the technician side is the mechanic notes. Mechanics can make their own notes relevant to what's going on with the ticket. If you check off internal, these will show up on an internal printout copy of the document. So if it's valuable for you to print that information out and see it, you'll want to check internal. If you're worrying about these notes populating in the customer's copy, they do not. These are all going to be they're not going to print out on a report unless, of course, you check internal, in which case it's going to stick onto the internal copy of the invoice printout. But just safe for you to know, I would still be careful with what you're putting onto your tickets, but none of these will populate on a customer's version of the printout. So just figured I'd keep that in mind. And any notes made in here will historically stay. So forever, you will always have a technician notes section here, and as you can see, it's in red because there was new information here or something keyed in. So it's always, again, there's visual indicators all over the system. But we can see that there was a note here. It looks like it's just an empty one. But again, all of that information can be stored on this notes tab as well as a view notes. We will find that here. And as you've probably heard me in our previous sessions, probably the best things you can do within this software is to notate what is happening with your customers, whatever conversations are happening outside of the system, bring that info in so that if I'm a brand new service employee and I'm getting familiar with Amira Mercedes, she's a bit of a heat case. She's had issues in the last year of us servicing her camper. I'll be able to very quickly capture all the notes from not only this RO, maybe I need to historically see why Amira is so frustrated with our dealership. If I go to the entity record and click on the messages tab, I can see the first time she did business with us way back in 2012 and review notes I could put in for the service department only, because maybe I'm not concerned what sales has said to her, but I want to see how the service department's done. So look at all these service notes, let customer know parts are back ordered, called customer. All of this information is going to help the dealership run more efficiently by communicating both internally and making sure the communications to your customers are spot on. The more notes, the better. This isn't just a sales functionality. Notes are incredible for just about anything you can bring in here. Sometimes that's what stops a bad customer experience from being a generally okay one. So sometimes I would just say try to make notes whether you're a mechanic or you're a service writer at any point in time. That is pretty much it. I'll leave these next few minutes here. I know we're running a little over. But if you do have anything outstanding on the technician side, let me know. The main point I wanted to show you is once we're done, and I do mark this as tech done, save my changes. When I get out of the ticket, let me go back all the way to my main invoicing list here. Let me close out of I got the ticket open on my service side here. But once I save my changes and get out of this invoice, I didn't save my changes because I had it locked. So let's mark this one more time. Tech done. Save it. jump out of it. Now I have nothing else to clock into. So watch what happens as I go back to my main invoice list. It shrinks down to 2. So the objective of every technician in this Motility platform is to continue working on these invoices until I have nothing left to do for the day, and in which case I'll just stand around. So as long as your service writing team is supplying dispatched work to each technician, they have one screen to pay attention to, which means less time fiddling with a computer or a tablet and more time working on these vehicles and earning, especially if they're in a flat rate shop, definitely earning some flat rate time. I'll go ahead and leave the floor open for the next 5 minutes or so if there's any questions coming through. For those of you who will be joining us tomorrow, the next session's scheduled. If you'll give me just a moment, I can get that for us. So according to my notes here, our next webinar session will be at 10 a.m. tomorrow, and that is going to be on parts invoicing and parts kits, which we've already done a little bit on the service side for canned jobs. We did talk a little bit about service invoicing, so this is going to be a lot of the same. But again, the more overlap, the better, because as you start to see more and more of the system, so much of it is consistent in its design that eventually things will start looking very familiar. Afternoon sessions tomorrow will include master inventory, keying in parts into the system, and then, of course, succinctly following that at 3 p.m. Eastern, it will be parts ordering and receiving. So tomorrow is a big, heavy focus on the parts department. So I would involve any of your parts orderers, parts receiving team, any of your counter folks who will be involved with over-the-counter sales, and then the folks that are inputting inventory at the parts management level would be a good idea to have them joining. So again, thank you all for your time today. I hope most of these sessions have been helpful. Your feedback is always greatly appreciated, so please feel free to let our team know how these webinars are going, if they're helpful, hurtful, and as always, we will talk to you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. Otherwise, have a great rest of your afternoon, everybody. Thank you.